Does your business provide a quality service or product? If the answer is yes, then there is a combination of tactics that can be customized to fit your unique business that makes your business super profitable, creates wealth, and makes a difference in the process. I know this because I've built a few tiny businesses to more than $70 million. You're listening to the Entrepreneurs Radio Show. Conversations with self-made millionaires and high-level entrepreneurs that will grow your business. Hey, it's Travis Lane Jenkins. Welcome to episode number 109 of the Entrepreneurs Radio Show, a production of RockstarEntrepreneurNetwork.com, where each and every week I connect you with rockstar entrepreneurs so that you can see that successful business owners are really just everyday people that stayed committed to taking constant, focused action. Now, today I'm going to introduce you to Sarah Shaw. Although before we get started, I want to say thank you to Jesse Leahy from United States for the 5-star ratings and a review in iTunes. Jesse wrote, "No hype" as the headline, just helpful, useful information. Jesse went on to write a very detailed review. Jesse, I really appreciate the rating, the review, and your feedback. Really, really means a lot to me. Just in case you don't know, writing a review does help us reach more entrepreneurs just like yourself. The reason for that is iTunes and Stitchers believe that if you're leaving a comment on the show, then it must be valuable, and therefore they'll serve it to a larger number of their audience. So if you have time and you do find value in the show, I'd really appreciate it if you'd go in and leave us a review and just tell me how we're doing. Be honest, be candid, and if you think we're doing great, then give us a great review. And of course, I'll recognize you on air and say thank you. Now, one other thing that I want to point out before we get started is the wide range of people that I've been bringing to you from all different types of industries. The reason why I'm doing this is because the status quo is not working for 90+% of the businesses. So I want to challenge you to think outside the box and get a perspective from a large variety of successful people in different industries. You'll start to see that there's common denominators across all of those industries. Doing this also will help supercharge your business acumen because you'll understand things on a much deeper level from a multiple of angles. One last thing, before we get started, I want to remind you that there's 3 ways you can take these interviews with you on the go: through iTunes, Android, or Stitcher. Just go to RockstarEntrepreneurNetwork.com, click on the iTunes, Android, or Stitcher button right there on the menu bar, and it will take you directly to the podcast so that you don't have to hassle with trying to search it on each of those platforms. So without further ado, let's get down to business. What do you say? Welcome to the show, Sarah.
Thanks, Travis. I'm really excited to be here with you.
I'm excited to hang out with you. So I have a quick question. Okay.
Yeah.
Can you give me the backstory of what brought you to the success that you're having today?
A quick sec.
Take as much time as you think.
I'll give you the short story because it can be long and funny. So I come from a long line of entrepreneurs. All we know of is 4 generations. I'm 4th generation. All my siblings are entrepreneurs. My parents were, my grandparents, and my great-grandparents, but I don't know beyond the great-grandparents. But the funny part is I had no interest in being an entrepreneur. I was like, that is for the birds. I want my paycheck, my pension, my insurance. I just want to know that I'm stable.
Right.
So after I worked in the movie business for about 12 years doing costumes, I got bit by the entrepreneur bug. And I had this idea for this handbag. And it was this little kind of shopping tote, and it was cut with pinking shears, which are those zigzag scissors. Mm-hmm. And I created this little bag, and I'm really not a seamstress. I don't draw. I don't really know how to do any of that kind of stuff. Even though I was a costume design major in college, I kind of just bumbled my way through the sewing part. And just like both my grandmas were fashion designers, and neither one of them knew how to draw or sew or anything either. So I was like, well, if they did it, I can do it.
Right.
And so I started this handbag line, and it was sort of on the side and working at night till midnight and early in the morning before I went to work because I still had my job and I had a mortgage to pay. So over the next 5 years, I developed this company into $1 million brand and was sold all over the country and the world and department stores and 1,200 boutiques across the country. And I was in all the magazines and got my products into movies like Legally Blonde, and I made bags for Julia Roberts for Ocean's 11 and America's Sweethearts, and it was on Friends and Will and Grace, and all those things were really popular back then. This was in the late 90s, early 2000.
Okay.
So then I made every mistake under the sun because I had no mentors. I had no one to ask. I kind of bumbled along. I had no business degree. I totally got my street MBA the hard way. And so I ended up closing my company in 2002 because I lost all my financing after 9/11. My investors pulled out, and I just couldn't recover. It was just too bad. And so I patented a product, a closet organizer for handbags, a couple years later. And when I launched that business in 2006, fully by myself, I was like, I'm going to do this on my own, no investors. I know what I'm doing now. And I did. I had one product. I sold it in 12 colors. And in the first 2 years, I did $500,000 in sales. And it was mostly online in like 400 stores. So it was selling like hotcakes. And I was in lots of magazines and got it to Jennifer Aniston and sold it in People magazine. And it was really fun. And then somebody said to me, hey, coaching is really taking off now. And I was like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Who would ever hire someone to teach them how to do something? And they looked at me like I was a total idiot. And it's sort of how all my businesses have started. I've had many companies over the last 20 years, and they've all been someone going, hey, that would be a really good business idea. And me going, really? Scratching my head.
Right.
And then I would turn into a business, and it would be really fun and successful. And so again, here I'm looking at my friend. I'm like, a coach? God, people are going to pay me for information? Like, can't they just look it up on the internet or something? And she was like, remember how when you first started out, you didn't have anyone to talk to, and you felt like you could have been a $10 million company if you'd had a coach? And I was like, yeah. She goes, well, here's your chance. And so in 2009, I created my company, which I have now, which is Entreprenette. And I actually trademarked the name like in 2008 when I was pregnant with twins at like 3:00 in the morning. I was pacing around. I couldn't sleep. And I was like, Entreprenette, that is an awesome name. And I was literally on the computer at 3:00 in the morning, like looking up, on GoDaddy, looking up the domains, and it was available. And I was on the USPTO looking up the trademark. And I was like, how is this possible that this word has not been taken already? And so I literally sat there, filed all the trademark papers, and did everything at 3:00 in the morning, and not really knowing what I was going to do with this business. I thought I'd just write a book, and that would be my, coaching.
Right.
And so anyway, I hired a business coach because I didn't know how to start a service-based business. I'd just been doing products my whole life. And I launched my company in 2009, and I've been doing this since then. And I've worked with hundreds of women and couple of men, but got to be really secure to work with somebody whose company is named Entreprenette, I guess. And it is, I don't know, and I work mostly with women who have female consumer-driven products. So that's sort of why I think a lot of men haven't come to me with their products. But it's I've had some men pass through some of my online classes, and who have clothing lines and things like that, and it's been super fun. And I've met so many amazing people, and I watching my clients get their products into stores of their dreams and into celebrity hands, and get press for themselves. It's been really cool.
Cool. Well, I went through a similar arc doing different things, and so I have my own beliefs for this answer for this question. Although I want to hear what yours are. What, after going through this journey yourself, and you already said that you felt like you could have built a $10 million business if you would have had a mentor instead of a $1 million or a couple of $1 million business. What do you feel like most business owners are missing that they get when they do have a coach?
Great question. Okay, so I think, especially because I know mostly about the product world, so I feel like what people miss the most is their margins. They don't know how to price their products. And that was my biggest downfall when I started my handbag company, is not knowing how to price your products and how to take into account all of the things that need to go into building those margins so that they're healthy and your company can grow and thrive. Because if you don't have the right margins, then you don't end up with the right amount of money in the bank in order to produce your next line or go to a trade show or whatever, pay a sales rep, or all the different things that go into that particular type of business. And then also, I think a lot of people get stuck in, and don't kill me for saying this, a lot of people get stuck in building a business, wanting to have a business plan so that they feel, I think a lot of times it makes them feel like they're going to feel more organized and that they're going to know, like the business plan is somehow going to magically tell them what to do. And, I'll follow my business plan and then I'll be successful. I've honestly never known anyone who's ever done that. And I personally have tons of friends that are entrepreneurs making, millions and millions of dollars, or make monthly revenues of, 60,000 for doing nothing really, like just money that comes to them. And they, some of them are like, yeah, well, I started out with this business plan. And, after like 3 months, I threw it in the river because, I realized that it's just a bunch of numbers on a piece of paper. And what I find with people is that when they have these business plans is then they feel like they failed when they don't succeed or do the milestones that are in the business plan. And that then gives them all kinds of negative connotations towards the business. And they feel, they get depressed and I can't do this. And it just slows the whole process down. And so those are the two things I think that if you have some strategic planning and someone who can actually help you look at the big picture and see what some of your short-term goals are, that if you can bite those, take them in little bite-sized pieces and keep moving along, that gives you this positive flow that is more encouraging than, I think, a bigger, trying to bite off more than you can chew and trying to look at like a 5-year or 10-year plan,
right,
which I think many people do with their businesses, and they forget about the day-to-day.
Well, yeah, so I agree with you. The business plan is, and I filled out one years ago. There was back when they were just selling boxed type software at cons or the computer outlet stores, maybe in say the late 90s, and you basically download the business plan and you answer all the questions. And I agree with you. Now, the problem with that is it's just a bunch of questions and data points and things. I think a business needs to have a strategy, and I think that
sure, I agree.
Yeah, I think that strategy needs to be a living organism almost. It grows, it evolves, it changes, just like you. The person you were 10 years ago is very different from the person that you are today, right?
Exactly.
And even your goals and what matters to you on some levels change. And so a business has to evolve. I also have found that it eliminates there's so many dead-end roads that as an entrepreneur you can drive 10 miles down a road to find that it's a dead-end road. Whereas when you have a mentor, they can say, don't even turn down that road.
Exactly.
Right. And I think that's the fast forward benefit of having a mentor is both you and I went through the learning process in a trial and error way, and a lot of it's due to the era that we grew up in. A lot of these things weren't available. Do you agree with that?
Totally. They were not available. The internet wasn't as prolific as it is now, and also I think more people I think in the late 90s, entrepreneurialism was really starting to, take a hold of the American culture in a much bigger way, and that people were guarding their secrets. No one wanted to share. That was my experience, at least. I would meet other handbag designers and I'd be like, oh, would you mind sharing your factory with me? Like, I'm growing and I can't keep using this little factory I'm using, or these old ladies sewing at home, or whatever it was, and no, I can't, because if you get bigger than I am, then they're going to sew all your stuff and they won't sew mine,
Right.
And they couldn't see that whole, like, let's grow together and, we make totally different style bags and we're not competitors and all that kind of stuff. But for anything that I was trying to reach out to people about at the time, I literally hit closed door after closed door,
Mm-hmm.
And I think now with the way the internet is, more, its information is pretty easily available. And that also, I find other people, like even clients, when I do like different group coaching programs, all these women are just, hey, I'm going to give you this resource. Let me share that with you. Or let's trade store lists, or, I'll give you my PR list if you give me yours. And they see it more as helping each other grow instead of, the door closing every time you meet somebody new. And I find that fascinating.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree with you. Now let's go deeper on the first thing you talked about. I coach quite a few people, and I find the same thing that you're talking about is they don't understand margins. They don't understand how to get. Most business owners don't know the difference between a margin or cost plus. Mm-hmm. In doing the math on that. And you really don't even need to be a mathematician to figure it out. But they also don't know how to separate their cost of goods sold versus their overhead and other things. And so they're just not looking at things right. Go deeper on that. Well, what do you normally coach people through, and how do you do that?
Well, so in the product world, there's so many little things that go into creating a finished item. So let's just take a handbag, for example. So there's, maybe you get your leather from Italy and you order it, and it has to get, shipped to America, if that's where or wherever you manufacture. And a lot of people just go, oh, my leather's $8, a square foot. And then they just don't take into consideration the freight, or they order things from New York and they manufacture in California, and it costs money to get it from New York to California. And so there's a lot of little things that I think a lot of designers and people who are in manufacturing forget to add in to their cost of goods sold. So even just how you get the raw materials to you. So I created some charts and different methods for people to account for all of those different things, listing out all of the different products that they use and all the different raw materials to actually make whatever they're making, plus all the freight charges and all of these things that go into actually, it's hard sometimes for people to envision the actual finished product if they've never seen their product finished. They don't think about the packaging or the labeling or, hang tags or all the different things. And maybe if it's clothing, it needs a hanger and a plastic bag or something, whatever your philosophy of your business is. Maybe you don't use plastic bags, but, however you keep it clean, and all of the different things that go into making it perfect to get it to a store or to sell it online and get it to the end user. So I really stress to people that they, have to sit down and dissect each piece, because a lot of people come to me and they already have a finished product, but they've just got them sitting in their garage and they don't really know how to sell it. And so they're like, help me, my husband's going to divorce me if I can't sell all these things, or he's going to throw them in the trash, And so, but they often don't know about all the pieces that have gone into, or they don't remember all the pieces that they bought to put these products together, and they're sort of guesstimating. And I think that that's where, people end up losing a lot of money, because even, 10% loss can make a huge difference in your net profit at the end of the year. If you're underselling your product by 10%.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree with you. I'm sorry, I stepped on you. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. So I just, usually when I start working with people, that is actually one of the very first things I do, is look at their costing and the process that they used to do that. And usually I'm like, hey, do you have a costing sheet, or do you scribble it on a piece of paper, or how do you keep track of all that? Oh, I just remember it. I'm like, really? Well, I have a really good memory, and I can't always remember, exactly how much yardage I used on this particular part of something. Or, there's so many, especially with jewelry or things that have all these tiny little components, 14 of this bead and 17 of that, and, things that were cast in silver or gold or plated. And there's so many different processes that can go into building products. I don't care if it's an airplane or an earring, they all have their pieces that go into it and end up having a finished price. And so for me, that's sort of the basis of, like, it's not necessarily the linchpin of your business, but it's definitely one of them, and making sure that you are profitable, because if you're not profitable, you can't be successful.
Right. So I'm making lots of notes while we're going here. And so what I really love about this conversation is I focus on the opposite side rather than products. I'm more in the service industry. And so I love hearing how you do that. And so even, one of the things that you're not mentioning, and I know you dive into, and a lot of people don't pay attention to it, is shrinkage. What it takes to make all of that stuff. Not only the ingredients that are on that handbag, but how much did you waste to get it there?
Exactly.
And all of those other components. And so one of the things that we do is I learn to create a par, and I teach people to create a par for whatever they're doing. And the par takes everything into consideration. We calculate everything to get an absolute minimum number for that certain service, as an example, and we'll take it in a unit. And then what we'll do is we'll put margin on it, and then no one can sell below par. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah.
And so, because a lot of businesses are, if they had that par in place, and this is kind of adding on what you're saying, if they had that par in place, they're selling a lot of things below par that's costing them, and costing them in cash flow, and costing them in profitability. Most people don't realize that you could actually you could start selling a widget or whatever you're selling. You could sell 1,000 of those and go bankrupt.
Totally. Yeah.
Right? I mean, you could have the best day ever in your entire life. You were dreaming of selling 1,000 of these in a month. You wake up tomorrow and good news, your account says you just sold 1,000 of them yesterday. And because you don't have your pricing right, your cash flow is going to go out to produce all of that, and you're going to go bankrupt in the process of trying to produce these things. And that's what you and I are kind of pointing at. And now, the thing that frustrates me about this is these little metrics that we're talking about, nobody is talking about. It's like, I'm wondering, why is nobody talking about some of these key things? And these are, I get that they're not the most latest social media, whatever. It's not new and sparkly. Right. It's not new and sparkly and interesting and fun. But these core metrics that me and you are talking about, and these and several others, will dictate whether you're able to generate any profits and whether you're able to build any wealth. Why do you think that's happening Why do you think it's a topic that nobody talks about?
I think most people are scared to talk about money.
Yeah.
I mean, bottom line. I mean, I don't really know anyone who like really likes to talk about money in their own life, you know? I mean, I feel lucky. Like I grew up in a house where my dad was always talking to us about money. And, my parents grew up in the Depression, and so money was a big topic when they were kids. My dad was born in 1927. So, he wasn't really aware of the actual Depression, but as he was growing up, 7 to 12, they were still reeling from it, and it was a big topic of conversation. So money was never something in his family that was taboo. But most of the people I know in general, like they don't want to talk to you about money, or if you, or even if you just want to talk about like general, like, hey, got any good stock tips for me? Or what are you investing in these days? Or how do you save your money? Or can you give me any pointers or, whatever, even just casual conversation. And I think that when it comes to business, that people really button up even more, because then you'll actually know the truth about what's going on with their business. So, and that they might be, looked down upon or something if they're not doing it right, or that they'd have to actually even admit that things weren't going so well, and that might make you think that they're failing at their business.
Right.
So it seems to me that it's a lot of it's wrapped up in shame, for whatever reasons, or just that they don't think it's polite to talk about it, or they don't want you to really know, how badly they're messing things up in their business.
Well, so you're alluding to something that you and I both know, since we both talk to a lot of business people. A lot of businesses are struggling more than most people realize. They're struggling to make payroll. They're struggling to pay themselves an adequate amount. There's a whole lot of things. So I completely agree with you on why the general masses of business owners are not talking about it. But why do you think it's absent in this sphere of experts, of gurus? I don't hear any experts talking about the most key elements of growing the business. Do you have any opinions on that?
I talk about it all the time.
You do?
Yeah. I have tons of blog posts about it. I talk about it. I probably to, my detriment at times, or people who listen to me talking on my live calls that I do and things like that. I'm constantly talking about margins and, the money and knowing your target market so that the right people are buying and, all of the things that kind of go into that. And I know a few guru type people who do talk about that. But I don't know why the other ones don't. I think a lot of them are really concentrating on sales right now. And that's the thing that I've noticed the most with the few people that I follow. I kind of can't take a lot of people. So I'm very particular about who I follow and who, whose advice I listen to. Just a lot of the techniques out there are just not my cup of tea. So, and I just don't think my target market would respond to it. So I tend to tune them out. But I do notice that most of the emails that I get these days from other, experts and coaches and people like that are more about sales. And that I don't think that, I don't know, maybe because they're mostly serving service-based providers, that they don't necessarily feel like they have a lot of overhead to be concerned about, or maybe they just think that they're smart enough to figure it out on their own. I don't know. Because I know for me, I sort of toe the line between the product world and the service world. I have a service business now, but my brain is much more tailored, I guess, in a sense, or used to the product world, because that's where I've been for so many years. And, and even up until a few years ago, I was selling my own products. And so when I look at my own service-based business now, I don't think of the margins in the same way because my overhead is so much smaller. It's not costing me $50,000 to build, a product that comes out of my head,
right?
Because I'm the one writing it and so it's not like I'm inventorying all the stuff and I need a warehouse or anything like that. I mean, I have a phone and a laptop and I can work from anywhere in the world anytime.
Yeah.
So I think I don't know. So maybe there's sort of a false sense of security with that, with people.
Well, in your service business, you're focusing on B2B people that sell B2C, right?
Correct.
So you're helping business to business, your business to their business, and you're helping them sell their business services or their product to the consumer. And so, that's a niche in itself, which not a whole lot of people are filling currently, especially when you cut that niche into women. I know that you don't exclude men, but women are your main focus. So beyond the two things, before we move on to the next segment, beyond the two things that you mentioned, is there anything else that comes to mind immediately that you feel like are critical to people making changes in their business to fast forward the success to the next level or next several levels?
Well, I think one of the things is always making sure that you've got something new coming out. I think what can stall companies is either fear of moving forward and taking the next steps. I think some people fall into the trap of, hey, I'm going to be my own boss. I'm going to have some lunch out with friends and it's going to be such a sexy life and all this stuff. And what I don't think people realize is that when you work for yourself, you work twice as hard as you do when you work for someone else. If you want to be successful, you kind of need to. And that there's nobody else, holding up the other end for you. Like if you don't go to work that day, and you're not developing something new, or if you're a designer, unless you've hired out designers, but most people, until they're making, billions, don't hire out their other designers to do it for them. So, if you're not on the ball with it all, it just falls apart. And there's so many aspects to keeping your business going. It's not just, creating product and hoping that it sells. It's the PR and the marketing and the online marketing. Now these days it's social media and blogging and all the different multiple levels that you need to stay on top of. And if you don't know how to do those things, it can actually be detrimental to the success of your business, because people are looking at your Alexa rating. If yours is like 13 million or something, they're like, wow, either they just started their business or nobody ever comes to their website, so it must not be a very hip product or service or whatever you're selling. And so I think that having that outward appearance, to the general public when people want to see what you're about and all of those, those external things that reflect on sort of the popularity of your business are not tended to, that can also impede your success as much as, slacking off on sales and not having proper margins.
Right.
But I think a lot of people these days sort of weigh the outward, the outward view and what your popularity is and take a look at that quickly. It's like when bloggers write to me and want to review my product, the first thing I do is look at their Alexa rating because I can tell instantly from that, approximately how many visitors they get each month, and they're like, yeah, we get 20,000 page views a month. And I'm like, with a 1.7 million Alexa rating, I doubt it. And if you can give me a screenshot and prove it to me, then I'll be wrong. But I've never seen that before. And so, and I don't blame those people for trying, and wanting to improve their business. And it's good to ask. And I think that having having people that you can talk to, whether it's a mentor you pay or a friend who's a marketing whiz, or, there's lots of young kids out there that really can do amazing things with social media because they have trained themselves and they've grown up with it. Essentially, they were 12 or 14 when Facebook came out and, were enamored with it and really learned how to work the system. And, so I'm not saying it has to be somebody you're paying tons of money to, who can be the person who gives you the bit of advice that turns things around for you. I think that the more you talk about your business with people and the more willing you are to listen to any advice that people have, I'm not saying you have to take it, but hearing what people have to say and being open to entertaining the idea that they share with you, I think is a really key. It's something that I think can be a key that can lead you to the success that you want. I've been given tons of horrible advice in my life, unfortunately, some of which I took because I didn't know better. And, and I'm sure lots of people have too, or I hope I'm not the only one. But
no, you're not.
And that having, and then there's people who give you, like, literally say one thing to you and you're like, oh my God, that's like the golden key to my treasure chest, and I just never thought of it that way, or something, or they give you a sentence, that's like, that's my tagline. Wow. Or something that really endears them to their business in even a bigger way and just like makes them feel like a superstar, because that feeling that you get when something feels right to you, I think really can empower you to move in the right direction.
Right. Now, quick question. Do you use paid media to drive your business, or is it all organic stuff?
All organic.
Nice. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, I sent you 3 questions over, and the first question, of course, for those of you that just started listening to the show, I really don't like to script anything in the show. I like to just have a natural, organic conversation. Although I do send 3 questions over to each and every guest. And so that first question that I have for you, Sarah, is which book or program made an impact on you related to business that you would recommend, and why?
Well, I've just started working with Frank Kern, and I've been following and reading and studying all of his free videos and all that kind of stuff. And I just think he is, for me, the smartest marketing person out there. And I finally just invested in one of his programs that's starting shortly. And I would, anyone who's looking for really amazing marketing tools, that is my go-to right now.
He has a book out right now. What's the name of that book?
He does?
Yeah. He recently put out a book. Are you talking about his book or his program?
I'm so out of it. No, his programs.
Oh, okay. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah. He created a book. I can't recently, and it's tied in with his program. So I'm sure you're going to get it whenever you get into his program. But Frank is a character, and he is brilliant also. So very cool. Thanks for that. What's one of your favorite tools or pieces of technology that you've recently discovered, if any, that you would recommend to other business owners, and why?
Okay. Well, you know how I just told you how all of my stuff has been organic? Mm-hmm. It has. But I'm just starting to investigate and learn about Facebook ads, because I feel like that for me is going to be my next marketing, one of my next marketing forays that I'm going to get into. Mm-hmm. And I just, I'm learning a lot about Facebook ads right now. And I think that technically it's not too challenging for me, which is really good. And because I really, I'm a big believer in learn how to do something well and how it works, even if you're going to end up jobbing it out. Because years and years ago, I hired people to do Google ads for me and things like that. And I knew nothing about it. So I actually couldn't even have an intelligent conversation with the person I hired. They'd ask me things. I'm like, I don't know. I hired you to do a good job. Just do it, And I totally went against my own grain on that one, because I with my clients, I'm like, I don't care if you don't want to do your own PR. You need to learn how to do it and what the techniques are and what people are going to be talking about before you can hire a publicist, because otherwise they're going to talk to you and you're not going to know what the heck they're talking to you about. And so I'm learning about Facebook ads right now, and I'm really fascinated with it and the way the whole thing works. I'm just enamored with it, actually.
Yeah, I use it quite a bit, so I second that. I'll confirm that you're on the right path with that.
Yeah, thanks.
What famous quote would best summarize your belief or attitude in business?
Okay, I have two really short ones.
Okay.
So this is one I've had over my desk for about 15 years. And it's a Chinese proverb, actually. And it says, "Be not afraid of going slowly. Be afraid only of standing still." So to me, that is sort of that's the linchpin of business to me, that it's slow and steady is sometimes better than fast and furious. But if you never take the first step, you never get anywhere.
Right.
And the other one is a Donald Trump quote, but actually it's funny because I interviewed Damon John a couple years ago from Shark Tank, and he told me his mom told him the same thing, and I was like, I love this quote too, which is as long as you're going to be thinking anyway, think big. So
right.
Those are two quotes that I have had over my desk for many years.
I like them both.
Thanks.
I wonder, do you have any special superpowers that you can share with us?
Any superpowers? Okay, well, here's one. That you can't ever, I don't think anyone can ever be successful until they really know who they're selling to. So who their target market is, or avatar, or whatever you want to call it. And that I don't care what you're selling to them, but if you don't know everything about that person, like really, like they're your best friend, right? Your BFF to the nines. Because if you don't know where they live or what their income levels are, what they're capable of, the kinds of things that they like in the world, and whether they have kids or don't have kids, if that relates to what you're selling them, but everything about them, like down to the car they drive and the clothing they buy, and whether they go to PTA meetings or just spend their whole life in yoga class or whatever the deal is, that you need to know who they are, because you can't sell the wrong thing to the right person. And that once you know who they are, it really helps you with all your blogging, with your social media, with your any advertising you might be doing, helps you pick out the magazines that you'd want to get some press in, or newspapers, anywhere you're looking for some free PR or editorial placements. All the languaging that you use to sell whatever you're selling to this person. And that all of those things together make you into sort of this, kind of like celebrity authority person that they look up to, in the sense of, they like you, so they want to buy your product. It brings you sort of into that know, like, and trust series, but also that that you really understand who they are, and so the marketing to them is so much easier, and it's not as big of a struggle.
So your superpower is an innate understanding of who your client is or prospect is?
And teaching my clients how to figure that out.
Okay. Cool.
So that's what one of the, after the profit margins with my clients, if they have products already, we immediately go on to honing in on their target market. And it really changes by figuring all of that out. It really helps to change how you look at your clients, and makes the whole sales process much easier.
I completely agree with you. How do people connect with you?
Gosh, they can connect with me on my website at entreprenette.com. Can email me at sarah@entreprenette.com. You can find me on Facebook at Entreprenette, on Twitter at Entreprenette, on Pinterest at Entreprenette. Pretty easy to find.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Remember that you can find all the links to the books and the resources mentioned in the show notes. just go to rockstarentrepreneur.network.com. It's a relatively new site that we've been building out that's just focused on giving you resources to grow your business. You'll find that there's recommendations and there's even some things that we offer as services. Now, my quote for today comes from Jimmy Johnson, and the quote reads, "The difference between ordinary and extraordinary is that little extra." This is Travis Lane Jenkins signing off for now. To your incredible success, my friend. Take care.